Hey guys, it's Kevin again, and this is going to be my review for Bates Motel Season 2, Episode 3, Caleb. And I was really looking forward to this episode tonight, guys. It really looked like a great one, especially, with that big reveal at the end of last week's episode. And unfortunately, what happened was that this episode ended up actually being kind of boring, and I was really surprised by how boring this episode was. I mean, it wasn't necessarily a bad episode, and I agree with Autobot Mike 18. Autobot Mike 18, we're one of the two people who review Bates Motel. He's one of my YouTube friends. I agree with exactly what he said, that this episode was not that exciting, and nothing that exciting happened till the very end of this episode. And two of the storylines in this episode didn't even need to be in this episode. I didn't even understand why one of them was in this. It didn't make any sense to me. Especially when you call your episode Caleb and you didn't even show a lot of that. But let's talk about the storyline that I cared about most, which was, of course, Caleb. We got to find out. This episode is more about us finding out about new characters and how they're going to impact, how they're going to be in the story, things like that. Some of these new characters I like, some of these characters I can't stand. One in particular I cannot stand. Let's talk about first the Caleb stuff, because that's the only thing that I actually cared about in this episode. I like Norman's storyline, didn't really like Norma's storyline. I thought it was silly. So basically with Caleb, we know that he is coming to Bates Motel. Dylan is at the motel. He sees this white car pull up, and there's Caleb. He comes out of the car. He says he's looking for Norma Bates, and Dylan says she's around and she's coming back. As soon as he comes into that house, Norma just, she gets so upset. She pushes him against the wall and is like, get out, and Dylan's like, what the hell did you just do that for? He's looking at her like, what was that for? And she says, never let him back ever. And, I mean, that right there was intense. I love that scene. I thought that was a great scene right there. And I wish we would have seen more of it, but we didn't. So, Norma is talking about something with Norman. This is also after so Norma's talking with Norman. And she tells Norman that basically, the first thing she tells him is that, she's done with the musical. Because we find out that she did not get into the musical. Because of her recent history with Shelby, Shelby, they don't trust her enough to be in the musical. I thought that was an interesting storyline. I would have wanted to see more of that, but we didn't really get to see that in this episode. And I wish we would have seen more of that, because I really enjoyed that, but we didn't really see it. So she's out of the musical, and Norman made the chorus. She told him that, and she told him to just stop it altogether, but he didn't want to. But the biggest thing that she tells him is that Caleb is there, and she regrets telling Norman about Caleb, and she says she's fine. She gets frustrated and tells Norman she's vacuuming, singling him to go away. And Dylan is... Then we see Dylan. He's with Remo. They see a tent in the middle of nowhere. They pull out their pistols, go up to the tent to see what's inside. And inside the tent are a couple of men who seem to be dead, with the sound of flies buzzing around their bodies and blood all over the floor. And we don't really know where that went. That was literally all we saw of that storyline. Honestly, that was just... alright, it didn't really make sense, but whatever. So then Dylan finally does meet up with Caleb, asking about what he's doing here. And Caleb mentions that he's staying around a bit until he gets a flight out. And Caleb says that it's not normal for what happened. He then walks off, saying it was nice meeting him. Dylan asks what made Norma so angry. He tells him it's none of his concern. She tells him it's none of his concern, and he does apologize. He wants to know, and she's not telling him. So he asks about what he'll do Tuesday. He's gonna go fly fishing, and Dylan shows interest in learning how to go fly fishing. So Caleb invites Dylan to go with him, and Dylan says he's busy, but that they could maybe grab some dinner, and he asks Caleb if he's got a phone for a number, and he appears. So Dylan and Remo, we do get a little bit more with the Dylan and Remo thing. Just really quickly, Dylan and Remo wait for the crazy guy with the leather jacket to arrive. When he does, he starts asking Dylan questions about what he's doing, and Dylan asks him what he's going to do, He tells Dylan not to worry and that he'll figure it out. Dylan and Remo are now digging up a hole to bury the dead, and dead bodies they find in the tent. And Dylan appears, and then we see Norma. She's getting ready for a party, and Dylan appears behind her. She asks what happened to him. He makes an excuse about doing some gardening, and Dylan then says he feels bad for bringing Caleb into the motel without checking with her. And then Dylan tells her that he wants to understand what's going on between them. Now, Dylan at this point is probably just thinking, oh, this is probably just like another Abernathy situation. You know, it's nothing really to worry about. If you remember, you know, the one guy from last year, I think his name was Abernathy, you know, he was definitely an unwanted resident. He's basically thinking the same thing, but we know it's much more than that. We know that. Dylan appears behind her, though. If she asks what happened to him, he makes it... Okay, I already read this. Norma is to play cool. Dylan isn't buying it. He's pissed that she never tells him things. And he knows that something happened between her and Caleb. She's just not admitting it. We know what happened, but he does not know. All he knows is that something happened and she's not telling him. So Norma gets angry and tells Dylan if he needs to worry about someone's brother, he should worry about his own. And that he needs a ride to the beach, and slams the door. So from here, he's with Caleb in a bar. He's telling Dylan stories about the past, and Caleb completely lies to Dylan. You know, he says that they used to be raped and abused by their father, and if you remember, Norma said that that's what everybody thinks. It was her father, but it was really her brother, and it was really big that he told Dylan this, and Dylan doesn't, you know, Dylan really does not understand, and wants to know about what they went through, and you know, you basically see that they get pretty tight in this episode. They get pretty tight, and he gives him $11,500 of his hotel, and Caleb gives Dylan a hug. He tells Caleb that he will talk to Norma about how they should both talk to each other about the problem, and Caleb tells Dylan that he should actually come to Costa Rica sometime, and basically Dylan then goes home, and he tells Norma, he says, hey, what's the problem with Caleb? He's a nice guy. He thinks that is. And Norma admits the truth to Dylan. Now, Dylan does not believe her for a second, because think about all the other shit that Norma's done to Dylan. She's lied to him all this time, and he just does not believe a word she's saying. You know, he's saying that, and then he basically says, this guy that I hardly even know, knows me, you know, I feel more protected around him than I do with you. And Norman hears this. He goes completely apeshit on Dylan, because he knows what Norma went through, and he goes completely apeshit on him, and his aggression gets to him, and eventually Norma reveals the big reveal in this episode. I absolutely love the way they did this. Norma says, stop hurting him, he can't help it, he's his father. Caleb is Dylan's father. Because what we found out was that not only did Norma get raped by her brother, but it happened over and over again every single day, and one of those times, they made Dylan. They had unprotected sex, and they had incestuous sex, and they made Dylan. So, Dylan is actually Caleb's father. Dylan is actually Caleb's son, and Caleb is his father, but Caleb's also his uncle. You know, it's pretty crazy the way that worked out. I would have never expected something like that, but I think it's a great twist, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where that goes. So that was very well done, and I absolutely loved that part of the episode. That whole storyline was great, fantastic, nothing wrong with that storyline. I absolutely loved it. Let's get to Norman's storyline. Norman's storyline was kind of boring. Basically, what happened with Norman's storyline was Emma and him find the suicide note that Bradley had written, and they basically think that Bradley's dead. And Emma feels really bad, because she never liked Bradley. She still doesn't, but she feels bad because she never really got to talk to Bradley. So she wants to throw this bonfire for her, and now we have this new Cody girl, who I absolutely hate, by the way. I do not like this girl at all. She seems like completely the wrong girl for Norman. I don't like her. I don't. She's not interesting. I don't like her character. Cody is a very strange girl. He invites her to this party. Very strange girl. She's making out with this weird gay guy who, it was very strange there. I didn't know what was going on. That storyline was honestly just really strange. I did kind of like that Emma's moving on. Emma's finally finding someone. There's this one guy who was helping her out. She was very drunk. at this party. Emma does get drunk at this party, at the bonfire. And this guy offers to walk her home, so maybe Emma might get a new love interest. I like that Emma had a little bit more to do in this episode. However, I'm still thinking, Norman is right there. And I'm saying to Norman, Emma's right there. Why are you talking to this weird chick? Like, seriously, Cody's a weird person. Because Norman has this conversation with her and says, just wanted you to know, this guy might be gay. And she, this is her boyfriend we're talking about. The boyfriend she's been with all this time. And he says, just want you to know, this guy might be gay. And she says, oh, I know, I wouldn't worry about it, That is none of his concern. I wouldn't worry about it. And basically, she asks him if he is gay. He says, no, he's definitely not gay. And I found that storyline very strange. It does not seem like something you'd see on the show. And she says, and basically, they are actually working on the stage crew together for the play, which I kind of do like that they're doing that. I just don't like this girl. I don't like her at all. She's annoying. And I don't like her character. She's completely the wrong person for Norman, and I don't like her character at all. So, I don't know what to do with this Cody girl. In my opinion, get rid of her. I don't like her. I want her off the show, and just kill her off or something, because I don't like her character, and I don't think I'm going to be able to tolerate her for that much longer. I didn't like her in last week's episode, to be honest with you. I don't like her here either. I hated her in this episode, honestly. She's weird. And I know this is a very eerie show, but she's just weird, and I don't like her. Norma's storyline was honestly the stupidest thing in the whole episode. Norma's storyline didn't even need to be in this episode. I didn't like it at all. Why couldn't we have just had the Norman one? Was fine, that was fine. I liked some of the stuff in there. The Dylan storyline, of course, I love, but why the Norma storyline was really silly. Norma, basically, as I said, she didn't get a part in the musical, and this girl that, isn't in the musical wants her to basically become a little bit more popular. I think she thinks she's a nice soul and everything, and it's this girl, Christine, and she seems like a nice girl, honestly, and she tells her to come to her garden party to introduce her to people, and Christine doesn't take no for an answer, and ends up having Norma attend the party. So, she goes to the party, she arrives at Christine's garden party, she's obviously a little nervous, going in, because, she's not usually like this. When she walks in, it's obvious that it's a pretty big event. It'll be filled with tons of formal people. Christine sees Norma, runs up to her, gives her a hug, and Christine tells Norma she will only introduce her to people she cares about talking to. Norma's introduced to everyone. A man named George asks about where she's from. It goes on, and it was really boring, honestly. I really found it boring. I found it boring. I wasn't into this at all. I wasn't. So Norma eventually goes out to get some air outside. George comes up from behind her and tells her that desserts are being served. He brings her a dessert to try. Turns out that George is in fact Christine's brother. He admits that his sister is trying to set him up with Norma. And she says flowering but doesn't remember how to date. Like, why do we care about this? Why should I care about any of this? It's stupid. I don't like any of this. It's stupid. Eventually, though, we do get the end of this, which I did like kind of how the storyline ended. Norman's about to leave. This old man from behind mentions how she was the one who stood up to all the people during the meeting about the bypass. And she asked why he wasn't there and that she could have used help. And he says he couldn't because he wants to please everyone. And Norma stops the old man's car. She wants to buy the guy a coffee because he's someone who doesn't like the bypass. And the man says sure, and to give him a call, and his name is Nick. So, I didn't really understand why that storyline was in this episode because I felt it was kind of pointless. But that was the episode, and it was a bit of a letdown for me. I loved the Dylan and Caleb storyline. Nothing wrong there. That was a great storyline. I especially love the twist. I mean, Dylan's going to be so much more involved with this story now. It's going to be really cool to see what happens there. The Norman stuff's really weird. I don't like this new girl at all. I really hope that she's not on for that long, because I already can't stand her, and we've just been introduced to her, and I already can't stand her. She's just weird. I like Emma's thing, where with her trying, kind of, getting her own boyfriend. I kind of like that. And, that's basically it for this episode, though. So, let me know what you guys saw of this episode, and I will see you guys in my next, video, which will be my review for the new episode of Glee tonight. So, see you then. Bye.